Today we're going to walk through adding multiple cameras to your OctoPrint instance one more time. Hello everyone, Chris here, and over the years we have done a lot of content on OctoPrint. We've done multiple instance installs, we've added multiple cameras, we've done a native Linux install as well as an install on Windows. And I've been using OctoPrint a long time, and it has come a long way in the last couple of years. It's constantly being developed, as well as the Linux OS that you usually see OctoPrint installed on. It's always changing, and any of the videos that you see me hacking or tweaking OctoPrint or Linux become outdated quickly. I've also been accused of overcomplicating some of these subjects, so that's what we're going to fix today. Now, there has been a way to add multiple cameras in OctoPrint for a long time without interfering with the underlying OS. You can use config files, you can create multiples, and it should work just fine. But that's the process we're going to investigate. So far, this is the fastest way that I've seen to install multiple cameras on a single OctoPrint instance. So we're going to walk through all of those steps. Now, you can install OctoPrint pretty much anywhere, but most commonly it's seen on a Raspberry Pi. So that's the install that we're going to visit today. I know the Raspberry Pi is still really hard to get. Hopefully that changes soon. But if you want to use multiple cameras, maybe you already have an OctoPrint install on a Raspberry Pi that you can do this on. So let's not waste any time. Let's look at what it takes to get all of this installed. We'll walk through the steps really quickly. Then you'll be able to use as many cameras as you want on your OctoPrint instance. Let's go. So here we go. Here's everything that we need. I am using a Raspberry Pi 4. I know they're hard to get, but if you're adding multiple cameras, you probably already have a Pi with OctoPrint set up. Hopefully that's the case. But these OctoPi, OctoPrint installs are mostly focused around the Raspberry Pi install. You do need an SD card of some kind. This is a 16 gig A1. You can use whichever one you wish. And you need the proper power supply. This is a 3 amp from a Cana kit. Make sure you have enough power for your Pi for this project. That might cause issues down the road. I am going to show you how to do a Raspberry Pi cam. A lot of questions are focused around the Raspberry Pi cam and USB cams when using multiples, so I'm going to show you how to do that. And then we have 4 different cameras. We have a Logitech C270. We have a C170. We have a 920C, again Logitech, and then this old Microsoft Life Cam that I found in a drawer. I don't even know if this thing still works, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. Make sure you have your Raspberry Pi cam plugged in. We're going to deal with that first. I highly recommend you do this one first and then add USB cams as you go. I am also going to plug these USB cameras in one at a time so I can show you what they look like in the OS as they become available. So this multicam tutorial is assuming that you have a fresh install of OctoPi/OctoPrint on your Raspberry Pi. You haven't done anything else to it. Some plugins and changes that you've made already can conflict with this, so we want to make sure we're starting from scratch. Now, we do have that Raspberry Pi camera plugged in. If you go to Control right now, you can see that it's already working, and you can see one of our benchies. Now, given the way the Raspberry Pi cam works and its configuration, we are going to handle that in this default way. So we want it to be the first camera we use. If you want to use Raspberry Pi, you don't have to, but if you're going to, it needs to be first. So it's good that it's already working. Now we have to jump into the shell and punch in some commands to make this multiple camera setup work. It's also important to know the IP of your Raspberry Pi. If you're using .local, OctoPi.local, something like that for your Pi, it might work for this configuration, but I'm not going to risk it. Just make sure you know your IP, use those commands, and I know this config will work. Okay, here we are in the PuTTY tool. We have logged in with the default credentials, which are Pi and Raspberry. You might change yours, but this is going to be the default scenario. And the magic of this whole install is in the boot directory. So let's go ahead and change directory, cd/boot. And if you do an ls to take a look in here, the file that does all this configuration is called octopi.txt. You can have multiple octopi.txt files for different configurations, And that's how we're going to configure all of these cameras. But the piece of magic here is the directory that you put all these alternate versions in. If you use the correct one, it will allow you to use those at boot. So just real quick, I'm going to cat octopi.txt so you can see what's in here. The things we're concerned about: what type of camera. By default, it's set to auto. You're going to need to set that to USB or Raspberry, depending on which camera. You'll see more of that. Your camera options, this is where you will tell the configuration which camera you're using. You'll see more of that in a moment. And then the final setting you're concerned with is down here. We'll need to set a unique port for each camera that we're going to use. We'll set it down in this option. But we'll have multiple copies here so we don't get confused. And before you get started, this would be a great time to go ahead and make a backup of your Pi. In case something happens, you don't have to start from scratch. You could just restore the backup. If you go to Settings, go down here to Backup, you can create one, and then you could reload that if you wanted to. Since mine is brand new from scratch, I'm not concerned about it. So back to PuTTY. We're going to make a directory that will load every time it boots with our new camera configurations. So we're going to do sudo to elevate our privileges, mkdir for make directory, octopi.conf.d. And you have to have your password for sudo to use root, and it is Raspberry by default. So now we have the directory in root, and we're going to copy sudo cp octopi.txt, the one that we just saw, into our new directory. That's the octopi.conf.d. And we're going to make a copy for each camera we want to use. So octopi.txt, the default one, that's going to be for our Raspberry cam. It's just easiest to use this default configuration and port for that camera. But then let's make a webcam2.txt. We're just copying these contents before we make any changes. Let's make a webcam3, a webcam4. Up arrow brings up the command. So there's 4 cameras, and let's do a 5th one, webcam5. Now we can edit each one of these files for the camera that we'd like to use. Let's start with the Raspberry Pi cam. Remember, it's in the default one, so let's do sudo nano is your file editor, octopi.txt. Here's the file I was showing you before. For the Raspberry Pi cam, it's real easy. We just want to take the comment off of this line, just hit delete. Where it says auto, you can see in the comments up here, we're going to tell it to go directly to the Raspberry cam. So Raspberry. That's it. The first configuration is going to use the Raspberry Pi cam by default. You can Control X, Y, and enter to save, and we're done with that file. Now let's work on the other 4. So let's change directory into that octopi.conf.d. You can take a look in here. There's all of our webcam files. And let's start building webcam 2. Now, what you have to know is what device name, what USB device name, each one of these cameras are called. And you do that, you can display them by device. So if you do ls/dev/v4l/by-id. If you hit enter right now, there's nothing plugged in. So let's go ahead and plug in our first camera. Now, I've plugged in our Logitech C270 into a random USB port. It doesn't matter which one you use. And doing this configuration, if you unplug them and plug them back in, it's going to be exactly the same. So you don't have to worry about mixing them up. But now if you do that command, up arrow to repeat, you can see there's something there. That's the camera. Now, in later versions of Linux, you're going to see multiple indexes in case there's multiple streams from a device. We are just interested in index 0. That confused a lot of people in other configurations. but this is the one you want. And it's not necessarily going to tell you exactly what camera it is. Sometimes it has the model name, sometimes not. So I recommend doing this one by one, just like we're doing here, so you know which is which. Another trick, if you bring up that ls/dev command again, and just copy and paste that device name in there, and then hit enter, that will give you the full path name that you can use in your configuration file to set it up. So now that we have that, just highlight it to copy it. We're going to do sudo nano webcam2.txt. This will be the one for our C270. So that camera option that we changed to Raspberry Pi, to Raspi, is now going to be USB, because it is a USB camera. We can set our camera options, USB options, take the comment off. You can change your resolution or your frame rate if you'd like. All cameras are going to be different. Remember, the higher you use, the more resources it's going to take. But we want to call out a specific device that we just saw. So we want to use -D and then paste in that full path that we saw from that ls command. There it is. Now we know our C270 is being controlled by this file. The only other thing we need to do is select a port. By default, the USB camera port is 8080. I like to call out new ones for all of these so I know which port is which camera. So we'll take the comment off of this option, and just in the quotes, we're going to add a -P, and then for this one, we'll do 8081. And we'll just go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, down the line. But the first USB cam, 8081. So we can Control X, Y, enter to save. Our first camera is done. Now we're going to repeat the process. I will plug in the C170. We'll take a look with our ls command, just like we did before. We have a new device. Remember, use index 0. This one actually has the model number included, so it's easy to tell which one it is. We want this one, but we have to have the full path. So just bring that command up again, up arrow, add a slash, and paste in its name. There's your full command, all concatenated, so you can use it. Now we'll edit webcam3.txt. Same edits. Raspi is now USB. Camera USB options. Take the pound off or the comment. We'll add a -D and then our path. And then we need to update the port down here at the bottom. Camera HTTP. We'll add the -P and we'll call this one 8082. We're done. Control X, Y, enter to save. Then we move on to the next camera. Our C920 is plugged in. We'll repeat the same thing. There's our 920. We want index 0. We're going to get the full name here. There it is. We'll pull up webcam file 4 this time. USB cam. Camera options. -D. Paste in the full name, full location. And then this one, we'll do -P 8083. We're done. And then the final cam, we'll plug in this Microsoft Life Cam. We'll see if it even works. We'll do ls. There's our new camera. We'll grab its name. We'll get the full location. We'll edit webcam5.txt. USB. Camera option -D. Paste in the device location. All the way down. Camera options. -P 8084. Control X, Y, enter to save. Now, all of our cameras are set up. On reboot, they're all going to start working, so we can go ahead and reboot now. Sudo reboot now. When the reboot's complete, the first thing I want you to confirm is that the Raspberry Pi cam is still working as it was before we did these configuration changes. It's still working, everything's good. Now you need to be able to use all these other cameras. The easiest way to do that is to just bring up the stream in another browser or another tab. If you take a look in settings and you go to webcam, you can see by default it's pointed at this stream. It's just called webcam. You can copy this and then we can open a duplicate tab. Remember, we're using our IP, that makes this a lot easier. But if you just take off this name and paste in that webcam action stream, there's that Raspberry Pi cam. That's the stream for it. And we can do this same thing with our other cameras. We just use the port number. So I'm going to duplicate this one. And you don't need to call it webcam. You just need the action stream part. So we'll take off the webcam. And then after the IP, we're just going to do colon and then the port that you assign to that camera. So we're going to go after our C270. That was on 8081. We'll hit enter. There's our C270 stream. And we're just going to continue on. So we'll duplicate this one. All you have to do is 8082. That will be our C170 stream. There's that stream. Duplicate it again. 8083. There's our 920 stream. And then one more time. 8084. There's our Microsoft cam. Now it's not so lined up with our Benchy. Maybe we can fix that. But you get the gist. All of your cameras are working. Now you can use multiple cameras on your OctoPrint install. Now, the next way to handle this, to make it more convenient so you don't have to open up all these tabs, there is a quick plugin available for OctoPrint called Multicam. And after you have this configuration done, it's very easy to use. So just go back to Settings, go into Plugins, and we'll hit Get More. And you can just search for Multicam, and we'll install it. When the install is complete, we can go ahead and hit Restart Now. When it's done, we'll reload. And then you'll notice in Control, now you have webcams down here, but we just have one for default. So we can set up our Multicam plugin. We'll just go back into Settings, scroll all the way to the bottom here, and you have Multicam. We have our default stream. All you have to do is hit the plus sign. You can name these and then enter your stream. So I know our first one was our C270. I'm just going to go back to my tab up here, grab my stream, and just remember you need your IP and your port name. And if you'd like to use your snapshot, you can do that as well. The easiest way is to just go to your webcam tab and copy the existing one. Here's your snapshot stream down here. Just copy that, go back to your multicam, and paste it in here. And then do a quick update. So it's already got your local host IP. Just update the port to the same one you used for your C270, 8081. And then you can move to your next one, our C170. We'll just copy, and then we'll update our ports. 8082. We'll add another 8083, and then one more for our MS cam. Copy 8084, and then our local host for our snapshots. 8084. And then you can hit save. Then you have all your cameras here on the control tab. You can just flip through them. Multiple cameras in your OctoPrint install, the easiest way that I've seen so far. And a bonus tip, if you want to switch your default time lapse set up here in OctoPrint to one of these other cameras. Just go back to settings. Since we updated all those snapshot URLs, just go to webcam time-lapse, scroll down, and update this to whatever port you'd like. So right now it's on that Raspberry Pi cam if you test it. If you just switch it to one of those other ports that we set up in multicam, say you wanted it on the C270 at 8081, hit test. There's the snapshot it's going to take for your time-lapse. Easy enough. You can't do multiples in this setting, but it's easy to switch which one you'd like to use. Now back to the terminal real quick so we can talk about a bonus step. Now I don't recommend that you do this. This is editing the haproxy file so you can call these cameras by their name. You assign a backend so you don't have to use that port number as often. This can get really tricky. You can mess up the syntax in this file, and if you do, it breaks the whole configuration. So if I were you, I'd just stick with the IP, but if you're an advanced user, you want to give this a try, here's how to do it. So we're going to change directory into /etc/haproxy. If you take a look in here, you have haproxy.cfg. First thing you do is make a backup of that, just in case something bad happens. So we'll just copy haproxy.cfg to haproxy.cfg.bkp, just so we have one for safekeeping. You will have to use sudo. Then we're just going to use sudo nano haproxy.cfg to edit this proxy file. Again, be very careful in here. So down under front end public, we're just going to add multiple backends. We're going to call those so that we can use those cameras by name. You can see we have this one called webcam. That's the one we currently have Raspberry Pi cam. That's why we can use this /webcam in that URL. Adding these will give you that ability to use the other ones like this. So I would just copy this one. Be very careful on spaces, things like that in here. And paste it down underneath. And you can go ahead and do that for all of your webcams if this is the route you want to go. It might be a good idea just to try one at first. Make sure it works, make sure you got the syntax right so you have less to debug, but that's your call. Again, I don't really recommend doing this. So there's all of the different webcams with the name on them that I want to use. Now, how does it know how to grab that? Well, you have to assign the port. We just used local hosts. We're on the same Raspberry Pi, but you have to know what port to call. And that's where setting up the backend comes in. So you see all of these are calling the webcam backend. We want this one to use webcam backend 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can go down and set those up. So we'll scroll to the bottom. And here's the default webcam backend. We're going to, again, highlight this. And we'll paste it in. I'm just going to go ahead and add all of them. There's one for 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's the default backend for the Raspberry Pi cam. We'll go to the second one, backend webcam 2. That's what we're calling. The location, when you use the URL bar, we'll make that webcam 2. Server, you can change that to webcam 2. And then assign it the port that you used in the configuration. Webcam 2 was 8081. Then we can move on to the next one. Webcam 3. Webcam 3. Server, webcam 3. Port, 8082. Then webcam 4. Webcam 4, 8083, webcam 5, 8084. And there's all your updates. You can control X, Y, and enter to save. There is a command you can run to see if the syntax is correct in your haproxy file. You can do haproxy -C -V -F, and then the location of your haproxy file, which is /etc /haproxy haproxy.cfg. You can hit that. If all the syntax is correct, it's not right every time, But most of the time, if it comes back configuration is valid, then you're okay. You can go ahead and restart your haproxy service. Sudo service haproxy restart. And all of that does is allow you to use those webcam URLs. So if we go back to OctoPrint, let's go to Control. There's our Raspberry Pi cam. If you go to Settings and into Webcams, you see I showed that stream URL before. You can switch that to Webcam 2. Now that we have haproxy set up, you can hit Test. There's our C270 cam. Webcam 3, our C170 cam. That's all this is going to buy you, is the ability to use that URL. And if you wanted to shorten up, go ahead and copy this. Remember how we did this in our tabs? We had the IP. Again, the only thing this is going to buy you is now you could call it by the IP webcam 3, and you can jump to that stream. So it's a little risky if you don't know what you're doing. It's really not worth it to me. I can punch in the IP in the port, but if you want to do it, there's how you get it done. And we are all done. Multiple webcams right here in OctoPrint. You can use them however you see fit. If you have multiple instances installed, like I show in other videos, you can just assign these in that instance to separate all the cams out. You can use them with those as well. It works exactly the same way. So there it is, the quickest and easiest way that I've seen to add multiple cameras to your OctoPrint install. Now I know you still have to get in through PuTTY and do some command line work, but it's a lot easier doing what I showed you today than what we've visited previously. Also, the next question I usually get is how many cameras could I put on my OctoPrint install? Well, you saw that I was able to do 5, but a lot of this is based on performance. And that depends a lot on the resolution of the camera as well as the frame rate. Remember, the important part of OctoPrint here is to stream G-code to your 3D printer. You don't want to introduce any performance problems with those cameras that might slow that process down, ultimately affecting your 3D print quality. So be cautious of that. A couple of cameras shouldn't be any big deal, especially on a Raspberry Pi 4, pretty much the most common Pi we see now. So hopefully you found this helpful, and this answers a lot of questions for people watching a lot of the older content. I will link to this new video on all of those videos as well. That will be it for today, and I'll see you really soon on the next one.